Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Conlin. Welcome to Los Angeles Magazine, a live stream. I promised I would do more of these once the Luigi Mangione hearings were over, and they are. So here we are. I have a very special guest who is waiting in the green room to educate me and others on what exactly, or I shouldn't say exactly, but in his experience, because he is a former warden at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, which used to house Diddy. It currently houses Luigi Mangione. High profile inmates. He was there for a significant period of time. So he knows exactly what goes down when it comes to defendants who possibly have mental health issues. So we're gonna talk to Dr. DeWayne Hendrix about all of that, his experience, and again, what he thinks is happening based on his experience and research with Nick Reiner at the Twin Towers Correctional Facility in Los Angeles. Hey, Sal, super happy to have you here. Merry almost Christmas and happy holidays and happy Hanukkah. But let me bring in Dr. DeWayne. Hello, Dr. DeWayne. Nice to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for being here. And Dr. DeWayne and we met on Nancy Grace. So we stayed in touch and it's weird kind of saying that it's fun, right? Because we talk about very heavy stuff and whatever, but it is fun, you know? It is. Yeah, meeting people and people like you and yeah. So anyway, let's get to it. So Nick Reiner, he did not enter any type of plea for his arraignment last week. His lawyer came out the first day, Alan Jackson, and said, we need to make sure that he is mentally competent or he passes his medical evaluation. Then he goes back and he doesn't enter a plea. And Alan Jackson says there is a continued arraignment for January 7th. Many of us and legal experts have surmised that he will either be getting an evaluation to enter an NGI plea, not guilty by reason of insanity, or possibly they're raising competency issues, right? What are your thoughts so far on that?
Well, typically when an individual is arrested and they're having some mental challenges, the first thing that inmates do when they arrive to a jail, they're assessed for medical issues, mental issues, security, if they have any security concerns, if they're in fear of their safety or anything like that. So apparently, Mr. Reiner was placed on suicide watch upon his arrival to the Twin Towers in LA County. And the policy of the Los Angeles County jail, actually it's a state regulation that adults, when they come into custody, they have to have a mental review within 12 hours of arrival and a medical, physical review within 2 working days. So with high profile nature of this case, with all the other reporting that we've seen thus far, I'm not surprised that he has been on suicide watch, and based on the reports of his mental condition prior to the alleged murders that took place, I'm not shocked that they're going to take their time to really do a full psychiatric review on him before determining other housing within the facility as this case goes forward.
Now, let me ask you this. You mentioned 2 working days to get this physical evaluation done. I feel like this is not the case I know this is not the case at Rikers. I mean, it cannot be the case at MDC. That seems very quick, right?
Yeah. So the accrediting bodies for the American Corrections for corrections across the nation is the American Corrections Association. And then as far as healthcare, you got the National Commission of Correctional Healthcare. And then you also have the Joint Commission, who also does reviews in jails and prisons across the country. Now, the ACA, American Corrections Association standard is 14 working days upon an inmate's arrival to a facility. That's the national. But ultimately, it appears that California, for their jail standards, they're a little bit more stringent in terms of making sure that folks are being reviewed within those 2 working days. Now, there is a stipulation within the policy. Now, if the person has been transferred from another facility, then obviously they can use those records. But in Mr. Reiner's case, I'm not sure. I don't think he was housed anywhere else prior to this particular arrest. So,
yeah, not a a jail or a facility
right,
like that. I think there were different rehab centers, so they probably have that type of discharge paperwork, I'm sure. But so, I mean, so you're telling me that it could take someone who has serious mental issues, they could be possibly put in Gen Pop for 2 weeks while they're waiting for testing, or oh my gosh, that's so dangerous. Okay, that's kind of crazy. Yeah.
it
All right.
is.
Mm.
Yeah.
So Nick's testing was not due to a lawyer most likely saying, hey, test him. This was just standard procedure.
Right. And like for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, most of their psychiatric staff aren't on site. There's usually like a regional psychiatrist that covers a certain amount of institutions in a region. But apparently they do have on-site psychiatric staff there at the LA County Jail.
Okay.
So it's very possible, unless they're short staffed, it's very possible that they could have actually started some sort of research into his case. I do understand that he did not appear in that first court date because he wasn't medically cleared to attend. So that, to me, that tells me that had started some sort of review and did not want to make an early determination to send him to court prior to them figuring out was he mentally capable to understand the proceedings that were going on that particular day.
Okay. And then, just walk us through what this evaluation entails. I mean, I am a lay person. I am assuming they get his medical records, what medications he's taking, possibly any diagnosis that he might have. I mean, what goes into this?
So it probably started with the first conversation that he had with the mental health and the medical staff at the LA County Jail. So they asked a series of questions and then they determined, okay, hey, we need a little bit more time. I can't say this guy can go to general population based on this 30-minute conversation that I've had with this person. And then maybe he had some suicidal ideation during that interview. Because typically you don't just put someone on suicide watch just because you want to. I mean, there has to be some trigger point. Because not just medical staff in jails or prisons, anyone can place someone on suicide watch, especially like a lieutenant, someone who's over correctional services, if you see some suicidal ideation out of an individual. So I'm almost certain something triggered that response from the jail staff to place him on suicide watch immediately. And it probably occurred during his first interaction with the medical staff at the facility.
That's a really good point. I think I was under the impression that any defendant that comes in that possibly is high profile, possibly is at risk or knowingly at risk. I guess in my head, I was like, oh, well, they're always placed on suicide watch. But
no, that's two different things. So when you talk about a
Okay.
security assessment, like let's say he was a former officer, a sheriff, or a police chief or something like that. Obviously, you're not going to put that person on suicide watch, but you might put them in special housing. You may put them in solitary confinement based on, you may not know whether
Protection, you mean,
put
right?
for protection.
Okay.
You're not just going to throw them in general pop with everyone else. And then depending on how much space that you have in your facility, because like at MDC, whenever we had people who were charged with child molestation or anything like that, or they were former law enforcement or even former like county commissioners or mayors or whatever, we would place them in a specific unit where they could all be together, because typically, former cops and former officials aren't going to harm each other per se. So, you have a special place for them. But if you don't have the space, then obviously you would place them in some sort of solitary confinement or special housing until you can do a threat assessment to determine where this person can be housed. Because sometimes you may have to house the individual at a whole nother facility. You may have to place them or her somewhere else. So yeah, it's not suicide watch. It's just, hey, I just need to put you somewhere to protect you for a specific amount of time.
Yeah, and I think they had mentioned this during the Mangione suppression hearings as well. When he was initially, which is crazy, he was I did not realize this at the time, but he was placed. Wait, is that you or me? This like buzzing. Do you guys hear that? Oh, it just stopped. Okay,
Okay.
people in the chat, if you hear buzzing, just let me know. But he was initially placed in a level 4 out of 5 maximum state prison, basically, while he was awaiting his arraignment. And so they placed him on this cell block that had 5 cells that could be constantly watched and monitored. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I realized that. He wasn't at the Blair County Jail. He was at maximum security prison. That's crazy.
Well, think about it this way. You're just a placeholder. You're just holding the guy. You got the feds who want him, and you got the state of New York who want him, and you're holding him. So the last thing you want is this guy to slip out of your hands. One, you don't want him to escape. And then two, you don't want him to get harmed because you have a federal case and you got a state case. The last thing you need is some assault by a staff member, or he's assaulting a staff or anything like that. You want to hold them in the most secure place you can, and then call the officials. Hey, which one of you guys want him first? Is it the feds or the state? Y'all got 72 hours to come get this guy, or we're going to drive him somewhere, because ultimately you don't want any additional attention on him, because when he was at that particular jail, I don't know if you remember this. I mean, there was a whole lot of catcalling with other inmates and all this kind of stuff. They're like, hey, we don't need all this coverage. Let's get this guy out of here.
They yelled or something to him outside of the windows or whatever. I do remember that. Well, I do want to get into just some, just back to Nick Reiner, but I want to get into some specifics. So after he's evaluated, after they determine what types of medications he's on, any diagnoses that he has, and now that he's in this ward, this mental health ward, at this point, I mean, is he seeing a doctor every day? Is the facility, the jail facility, are they trying to stabilize him with medications? I mean, is that their job at this point?
Well, it wouldn't just be Mr. Reiner, it would be all individuals that come in there. So ultimately, they will assess, again, his prior medications, his current status, his current mental status, and then they will make some clinical decisions on what medications or what take him off or keep him on, create a behavior management plan, or where are we going to house him. If he leaves the medical ward, is he going to go into a general population unit? Again, I'll go back to MDC. We also had a secure mental health unit at the facility. So, they would have to get him to a point where they would feel comfortable enough to place him in a unit, a general population unit. And then are they going to give him a cellmate? I mean, so all those things have to come into play, and all their documentation has to be all their ducks has to be in a row, and it has to align with clinical practices. I mean, because ultimately, the doctors will make those decisions, but again, they're going to have the documentation and everything else to align to make sure, because all of this stuff is obviously going to come into question at some point, whether it's during the arraignment process or obviously probably, during the trial if it gets that far.
And I'm going to guess, I mean, I'm just going to guess that he's not going to be put in Gen Pop at all, just based on the high profile nature of who he is, the crime, and then paired with his mental health status, which, look, we don't know the answers yet. We don't know, we don't know exactly what's going on. We just know he is in solitary as of right now.
But think about it like this, Lauren. Detention kind of deteriorates most people's mental state anyway. So you have to weigh, is it beneficial for this person to be around other people? Because if you keep a person behind, 23 hours, you're already not getting a lot of sunlight. If you're in the cell for 23 hours, and you're going to give them an hour of recreation, or you let them out for a shower, or you let them out for a phone call. So again, all these decisions will have to align with the best clinical practices for him. Okay. So now you're right. They may not, but again, you don't want to tip the scale on whether he's insane. Was his mental health can, curb him from being held responsible during the crime. And then, you may exasperate his mental condition just based on being incarcerated. So all those things have to align, because
Right.
ultimately,
No,
like I was
good
saying
point.
earlier, the mental health professional that's going to make that determination is going to be reviewing. They're not just going to be reviewing Mr. Reiner. They can be reviewing all the paperwork and documentation as it relates to when he showed up there in between the time now and when that evaluation is done.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, that it's not, you're right. You might need some sun. You might need the company of others at times if you have proven yourself not to be a danger here. But I guess
Right.
I would like to know if there is a difference here in this evaluation that he gets upon entering the jail and the facility at Twin Towers versus the court appointed. I mean, I'm sure there is, right? Like where the defense hires their expert to determine whether or not he could enter the NGI plea, right?
Right.
That's completely separate than this evaluation. But
Right.
does this evaluation, this definitely comes in to court, right? When they're
Right.
discussing this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything from the time this person shows up to your facility up until the point of they make that determination, all this is coming into play. So, and I think from an administrator standpoint, as someone who, would just be a warden and letting the professionals make their decisions, you have to weigh all. You have to look at the security aspect of it. You got to look at the mental health aspect of it. You got to look at the physical aspect of it, and you have to put all those things together and then make a final decision. And then obviously you look at other cases, and these psychiatrists. I mean, they have experience with dealing with other patients and different things of that nature. So you have to weigh what's good, not just for Mr. Reiner, and not necessarily just what's good for the institution, but you have to put all those things together to make the determination whether. And I think the longer it takes for them to actually get this evaluation done, if it does happen, I think that's where the slippage could happen as far as the correction staff. Because, I mean, like you said, because, it's so high profile, everything has to align, because they're going to be people poking holes in every decision that was made from the time he showed up there.
And when, let's say that he is deemed a potential danger to himself, a potential danger to others. Let's say they did their own diagnosis and he does, in fact, have schizophrenia and he needs to be put on these medications, whatever. What would his daily schedule be like compared to other inmates in Gen Pop?
Well, I mean, they every day, whether you're in the solitary confinement or medical ward or in general population, there's a medical staff member that comes on every unit. You have medical technicians that come out, every morning and every evening to do pill call. So he will see those staff members. I mean, there are other staff that come on those units on a day-to-day basis. Now, in terms of if he is schizophrenic, my own personal interactions with a family member who was diagnosed with schizophrenia many years ago, one of the things that I do know those medication do is they sedate, because I know this particular family member would be in bed by 5 o'clock every day and would be, So now in a correctional setting, going to sleep at 5 o'clock every day is not, in the general population, may not necessarily be the safest thing for a person, because you don't know who's going to be going in and out of your cell. And then there's stand-up counts and all those other things. And, in a jail, most of the time, inmates don't have to have a job per se. But he would have to definitely see, he'll be seeing clinical staff. They'll probably place him in some sort of program. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, especially with the reports that he's abused other drugs, is the possibility of them putting him on what we call a medical assistant treatment program that they do for inmates who abuse opioids and different things of that nature. So a lot of time, and it's an expensive program. I mean, before I retired at the federal prison and I worked at in Oregon, we rolled out what we call the MAP program, where we were providing Suboxone to certain inmates who qualify for that program every day to curb their cravings for their opioid addiction. So, I mean, that's a whole nother element to this process that they may have to put into play for Mr. Reiner. And I do know, after doing a little bit of research, they have rolled out a medical assistant treatment program there at the LA County Jail. Now, I don't know how long it would take for them if they decide to put him on it. And I did do a little bit more research. So inmates, if individuals who have been diagnosed with schizophrenia who are on medication can also, if they have that dual diagnosis, can also be placed in the medical assistance treatment program. So that'll be another interesting twist because, you know, from reports that I'm hearing that he was self-medicating and different things of that nature. So yes, a lot of elements that's going to go into this.
That's so interesting because I do wonder if that will be a problem. Like, what is going on? Did you hear that? I swear, I heard something.
Yeah, it sounds like you're like you have a.
I know. I'm like, is that me?
Voice or something. Yeah.
Let me see. Okay. I was wondering though if this potential drug addiction, let's say, you know, and I'm not saying he necessarily has an addiction. I know that he reportedly partook in non-prescription drugs, abused them recreationally, but could this prolong the evaluation, right? Because they could say, hey, he needs to get clean. We think that these drugs have affected his brain. I mean, that could be a thing as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things that I was looking at as far as the officials being able to go back and see who, you know, not necessarily who, but, you know, what medications he was prescribed. But also the other thing that the electronic health records thing does, it also checks databases for persons who are doctor shopping and who may have abused, who may be abusing the system. So they're going to be able to take in all those things into account to determine you know, what process that they need to go through to kind of get him back on track. So
now, are they allowed to consult? And I'm so annoyed at whatever this feedback is. Are they allowed to consult with his regular doctors outside of jail on possible medication stabilization, or is that just done?
Typically, you know, as long as I've been in correctional leadership, it's once you show up at this particular facility, that they're going to determine what course that you're going to go on, because each facility, we did have a clinical director on site at all of our facilities, and then we have a regional doctor, a regional psychiatrist, a regional psychologist. So yeah, and they, you know, and all those staff have access to the records of each individual within those facilities. So I just don't see them calling a doctor from the outside. Now they shouldn't, you know, and again, because, you know, they're best practices that are already out there. So you shouldn't be veering too far off course. And again, I'm not a medical doctor, but, you know, that they shouldn't be veering too far off course in terms of the plan of action to kind of get this person stabilized.
Right. And, you know, I think about the facility that is MDC and the facility that is Twin Towers, and reportedly they are atrocious. So that kind of goes into play for me, where it's like, if you genuinely have a mental health problem, I mean, and you're in this type of environment, that is not going to really be very helpful. However, there's a reason that you're in this type of environment, right? And I don't know how the two compare, Twin Towers to MDC, but, you know, I gotta wonder.
Well, I'll just say this. I mean, I think, you know, most correctional agencies are, you know, short staff. You know, folks aren't really wanting to jump into corrections like maybe, you know, 25, 30 years ago when the 3 strikes law was put into action and all of that. So it was just a big push to get into law enforcement, you know, 30 years ago. But in terms of just, you know, you're talking about staff who have mental issues, you know, PTSD, working long hours, they're all stressed out. And then, you know, when the culture of an organization isn't great, you know, it does affect staff's output. And, it's in the larger a facility is I remember when I first got to MDC, we had over 3,500 inmates, and when you're talking about working at full capacity, I mean, over capacity, you got inmates sleeping in TV rooms and all these other areas. You got 3 inmates in a cell. I mean, the conditions just aren't right for a positive working and living environment.
Right.
So it just when you're in a big city like that, it just exacerbates the things that go on a day-to-day basis. Now, when you're talking about just getting things done, when you got folks that don't come to work, or when they do, they're not doing their job, it leads to inconsistency and all kind of problems. And then you get the issues where inmates aren't getting medically assessed within 2 days or 14 days. And then they're not being diagnosed. Folks, I remember one inmate, a guy had cancer and had been complaining for months that, something was going on with his stomach. And had he been seen, a couple months before, they probably would have caught it at an earlier stage. And then now this person's got stage 4 cancer. So,
wow.
So it's just these simple things. If people would just do what they're supposed to do their job, and then, you wouldn't see all these lawsuits and other things like that. So when you're constantly on the news for being overstaffed, inmates dying in jails, that's not good for recruiting. And then when you have infighting within the staff ranks and that kind of stuff, again, why would someone want to come work somewhere when, the conditions are poor? They may have to work mandatory hours, weekly and that kind of thing. So, that's what you see in large facilities like the Twin Towers and places like MDC Brooklyn. So,
I just want to clarify here because I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this. So the only real doctor, or let's say expert, that the defense can bring in right now to evaluate Nick is their own, to determine the NGI plea or the competence, right?
Right. And they're going to start with their assessment of what was going on with him prior to these actions, right?
But they get to choose. It's not appointed by the court, by the jail, when it comes to who's evaluating him to enter this plea, right?
Right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But the thing is, when the rubber meets the road, is going to be comparing, how he was doing when he showed up there a couple weeks ago versus how is he now, and have they done their paperwork? Have they followed all the clinical practices? Is the documentation there to keep him on suicide watch for 10, 12, 15 days? And then who made the decision to take him off? And then where has he been housed prior to him going back to suicide watch, if he ended up going back and forth? So all of those decisions are going to be very critical in terms of what that final determination is going to be when that time comes.
Right. And Dizzy, I saw you put something in the chat earlier because I think you missed the beginning. You had said, do they have the capability to complete mental health evals on site at the jail? And the answer is yes. And Dr. Hendrix had said that in LA, or at LA County, they do it. It's mandatory to do it within 2 days of arrival.
Yeah, they should have a mental health evaluation. Now they may not be able to make a final determination on what this person is, but they should have been given a baseline assessment within 12 hours, and then a medical review within 2 working days.
And that's clearly where it came from when Alan Jackson marched on scene and he's like, no, we are not going to this arraignment because he has not been medically cleared. And I think that makes a lot of sense at this point, where a regular inmate gets medically cleared right away. They go to their arraignment, they enter their plea, and then the process begins. Nick Reiner, there was a clear issue here. There's some clear alarm bells ringing, in my opinion, that they were like, hold the phone. But yeah, so I have a feeling I know how that's going to play out in terms of at this moment, there's so much we don't know. I don't think this is going to go to trial based on everything that I'm hearing right now and seeing right now and everything that I know, which is obviously not that much. But I'm reading in between the lines here. You know, I'm reading in between the lines of the family statements. I'm reading, you know, I don't see this going to trial. I don't know if you feel the same based on where it's going, but
yeah, and based on all the reports, and as long as, you know, and I'm hoping that, you know, not just for Mr. Reiner, but anybody who enters that jail, that they're taking each case seriously and they're following whatever protocols that they're supposed to. But yeah, all things that I'm seeing right now, I kind of have to agree with you. But from a, you know, from a corrections professional standpoint, I'm just praying that the staff there are doing their job and getting their ducks in a row and doing the right documentation and following the best practices. Because ultimately, you know, as a corrections professional, we're just here to house individuals to keep the community safe. We're not here to determine whether he's insane or not, guilty or innocent. And, you know, so I just want to make sure that, you know, the public knows that we do play a critical role in the system. But we don't want to be the ones that, oh, it's their fault that they didn't do the evaluation or they took him off suicide watch too soon because of political pressure. And I'm hoping that they're allowing him to see his attorneys and giving Mr. Jackson and his team access to Mr. Reiner when appropriate. And I'm not sure if his family, you know, he has any family support at this point. So, and is he going to have a social visit and that kind of thing? So, yeah, with him being on suicide watch, I mean, it's not like that he can't, but it just depends on his mental state at that time. So there's a lot of variables that's going to have to be worked out between now and then.
And I just want to ask you, when someone is on suicide watch, that also means I'm guessing, and obviously correct me, but there's a CO most likely outside of the cell at all times. They just switch shifts. They have to be there at all times.
At all times, yeah. There's someone there monitoring, and it's usually a staff member at a jail. Now in prisons, inmate companions would actually be trained to sit with and then staff would obviously have to come and do random checks, you know, every 30 minutes or so. But in a jail setting, it's going to be a staff member sitting there with the individual during that process. So, and I'm sure they have, you know, obviously they have cameras. I don't know if they wear body worn cameras at the LA County Jail. But if it were me, I would make sure that, you know, all the cameras are working, all the recording is working, because you don't want to, you know.
Oh, you don't want 3 minutes missing? You don't want 3 minutes missing from MCC?
No, we don't want no seconds missing in this process.
No, I'm totally kidding. I'm so sick of the Epstein stuff. I'm beyond. But really quick, just before I let you go, I wanted to ask you just a couple things about MDC itself, you know, because that is again, I discussed this. I've never been inside. I've seen the outside, but it's one of the worst places. I mean, what's one of the worst things that you've seen at the MDC as warden?
Well, I'll just say this, you know, that place throughout the years has been, it's almost like we just can't get out of its own way. From, you know, the early 90s when they had the scandal with the, you know, mafia guys, you know, compromising staff, bringing in all kinds of contraband, to a captain who was head of security that they were beating inmates in the elevators, to right before I got there, you had the young lady who got pregnant by the guy who was on death row and killed 2 undercover cops in Staten Island, and she named the baby Justice.
Wait, was she a CO? Or was she was a CO and she got pregnant by a death row inmate? I didn't know that.
2 undercover cops, who was convicted of killing 2 undercover cops in Staten Island. Yeah. And then 2 of my lieutenants, after I left there, 2 of them were arrested and given many, many years in prison for having sex with female inmates over in the East Building. So every 5 to 10 years, it's just, but they do have a lot of good staff in that building, but it just can't get out of its own way sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, sanitation problems, issues with getting along with the attorneys and judges, and it is a lot of issues. But I will say, with the population being down less than 1,500, they do have better leadership there now. I think they haven't had, knock on wood, they haven't had any issues there since 2019 when a bunch of protesters got pepper spray when they tried to enter the building. So they've been on a pretty good run. They handled R. Kelly, they handled Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right.
Diddy, obviously he's a lightning rod wherever he goes. I mean, even Mark Agnifilo did admit that the staff there were helping him, in his team and all that kind of stuff.
That's what I was actually going to say that, because during the trial, they actually spoke about MDC and how they were being super helpful and they were being really accommodating. And even the judge was, agreeing with him, saying, oh yeah, there was one problem about his minutes, like the amount of minutes he had. The jail kept messing it up and saying that he was out of minutes. And I remember his lawyers are like, no, dude, he is not dude, but whatever. They're like, Judge, no, he has hundreds of minutes here. So, I thought that was super interesting. But
it's a rough, now we call it, the staff, we call it the Beast of the East for a reason. So you can work there, you can work anywhere. And I have a lot of love for the people that work there. But yes, they do have a lot of issues and concerns. But, I
mean, I would last a minute. I would last maybe 20 minutes. I don't think I could do it. I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't really want to think about it, but I mean, I guess I don't understand, not that I don't understand, but it just comes down to, for me, like just the weapons and the hidden weapons. And I mean, I don't understand why there are so many of them. And that might sound like a naive question, a dumb question, but it's like there's checks constantly. What are these hiding places? Like, how many hiding places can you have in an 8x10 cement cell is what I want to know.
Well, they're very creative. I mean, think about it. We're creative.
We're
creative humans as people. I mean, we have a creative nature. And if you think about, if someone is restricting your movements, where you're going and that kind of thing, you get to be very creative. And then there's only so many staff compared to the inmates in the building. So yeah, they take a toothbrush and they can sharpen the edges of that toothbrush and make a knife out of that. I mean,
what are they sharpening it with though?
They can sharpen it up against their bed rails. I mean, whatever materials they can get their hands on. They take the glass, the plexiglass out of the lighting, and they do that and they make shanks. I mean, and that's why it's very important to staff. Again, like I was saying, you show up for work and you do your job, and then you minimize the amount of concerns that comes out of, the work environment, because the inmates want to be safe, but ultimately they still have to be prepared to protect themselves, because, any given day, someone can rear their ugly head and try to harm them. And that's just kind of, when you walk into a place like that, and I always tell my family, every day that I walk in the building, I might not walk out that building. I could be taken hostage.
That's so sad.
And that kind of thing. And that's, it takes a certain type of person to do this type of work.
That is so sad to hear. And you're right. It's a horribly, horribly dangerous, dark place. And I can't imagine just what it does to you mentally when you leave there. And, you're talking.
I look at it like, but you can also be a light, and I think that's, growing up where I grew up in Oakland, most people would have never thought that I would have, been in law enforcement or even been a warden compared to the people I grew up with. So I look at it like, you walk into a place like that, you bring a smile, you bring, positive energy, while being vigilant and watching your back, and and then you can try to make a difference. But again, correctional environments aren't made for, they're not libraries. They're not. Yeah, I mean, they're just not that. Um, so
Right.
you have to understand that there's going to be a certain amount of things that's going to happen there. But ultimately, the inmates let us do our jobs. You talk
Mm.
about one person for every 100 inmates in a unit. So
Wow.
again, you treat people with respect because most of them know they're there because they've done something wrong and they need to be held accountable. But let's do your
Mm.
time, and then let's focus on your family, your loved ones, and then when you come back to society, don't come back. But
Yeah.
then you have these cases
Don't come
like,
back here. Yeah.
right,
Do
but then you
not.
have cases like Mr. Reiner's and others where people who have some very serious mental challenges and are being accused of something very heinous. Because I mean, you think about it, if he was not mentally ill, there's things that you just don't do as when you come in. You don't harm children, you don't harm women, and you don't harm elderly. Okay. So if he was not having mental challenges, I mean, they would have a hard time trying to place him anyway. I mean, think about the the elderly parents that he killed, people that were highly regarded and loved across the
Mm.
world. So
Yeah.
again, so you got that variable to deal with when you go in these places. So it's a
Oh
lot to
no,
juggle.
I
And
cannot imagine. I think I was thinking of you like leaving to go to like an event at your kid's school or something, and the dads are like, "Ugh, I had a rough day in banking," and you want to be like, "Shut up, bro! I just watched a dude die in front of me, get shanked to death after." Like, you know what I mean? It's just like nobody can really connect with you on a certain level. That I would just imagine that it's a lot. You know?
well, and then before, the average lifespan for a correctional officer is only 59 and a half. And the mandatory retirement age, if you worked so long, if you choose to do that, is 57. So yeah, you're
Wow.
cutting about 15 to 16 years off your life. If, obviously, it comes to substance abuse, a lot of divorces. I mean, it's a lot of social problems that kind of plays into that number.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then most folks in corrections suffer from higher rates of PTSD than the military. These are folks that have been to war and that kind of thing because of the vicarious trauma, that you're
Mm,
dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So just think about regular office politics that you deal with your coworkers, right?
yeah.
Just think about that. And
Uh,
then you're dealing with all the other social ills that come along with working in that environment. So you have to be very intentional about being joyful and having good hobbies and just you have to have a certain vibe
yeah.
uh, in your fabric of your being to come out of it. And that's why I decided to retire at 48. I had
Don't
25
blame you. Oh my gosh. I don't
'cause
blame
I
you
knew
at
I would have taken
all.
more time off the clock if I had stayed any longer, but
Oh my goodness. Well, Dr. DeWayne, this has been such a fabulous conversation. Before I let you go, let
Mhm.
me know and let everybody know where they can find you if they want to follow you or, follow your journey now.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Of
My
course.
Instagram is at Dr. DeWayne Hendrix,
Put that
and
there.
my website is anewdaylight.com. And please buy my book. I wrote it back in 2019. It's called "Who Are You? See It, Say It, and Seize It." You can see the
Oh.
link to purchase my book on my website. Again,
On it was I think I have it, but you said it was New Day,
anewdaylight.com.
a new daylight. Hold on, let me put that there. Okay, I threw it in the chat for everyone to follow you and buy your book. And like I said, you're amazing. I know I'll be texting you soon to bother you about something.
That's
So
okay.
yeah, thank you so much for your
Appreciate
insights
it.
and have a great day and a great holiday.
All right, you too. Be well,
Thank
everyone. Merry Christmas.
you.
Happy New Year.
Okay, let me get. All right. So he's awesome. When I tell you I loved listening to him when we were on Nancy Grace together, she was asking him the funniest questions. She was asking him about, I think it was during Diddy, and she was asking him, oh, wait, hold on. I'll bump you, DeWayne. He's like, how do I get out? Probably. He's like, I'm stuck in your orbit. Here, I'll kick you. Okay. She was asking him about just what he would have for dinner, for lunch, whatever. And he was going through the menu. And I remember Nancy was like, that kind of sounds good. It doesn't sound that bad. And it reminded me, I have a friend that works at Rikers. And if you followed me on my my personal YouTube, which is Pop Crime TV, you'll know that I've said a few times, my friend at Rikers literally is obsessed with the baked chicken that they have at Rikers. And he said all the other COs are also obsessed with the baked chicken, and they line up early to get this chicken. And I was like, so I kind of want to try it. Can you bring me some? Is that possible? He basically was like, you're the dumbest person ever. Like, I can't, it's not like I get like a doggy bag of to-go food, you idiot. I'm like, yeah, sorry, that was dumb of me. I'm very sorry to say. But anyway, I found that to be really interesting. Number one, the fact that really all the defense gets here, all they get to sort of control is just finding a specialist or an expert to do their own evaluation for the court. Everything else is inside that jail. And Dr. Hendrix made a great point that once you enter the jail, once you are part of this state system, anything on the outside, any doctor, whatever, in that moment, it doesn't matter. And it does sound a little weird, I guess, that nobody would reference or call your doctor to see, or is it not? I don't know. I feel like to me, it's kind of weird if they're trying to figure out, how to stabilize this person. I guess they can get the information from their prior medical records, but it just seems like, okay, well, once you're in jail, you're under their care, and that's that. So I guess saying it out loud, it does make sense, but it is just weird where it's like, okay, somebody was working on your mental health previously until you allegedly committed a heinous crime. Too bad. Now you get what the jail provides. Also, the fact that you get this evaluation within 2 days of arriving is crazy. I think that's amazing. I am not even being political at all. This is not political. I crap on both sides, but I do feel like this is probably a benefit of a liberal state, actually paying attention and making sure inmates are cared for in a way without getting political. I do feel, that is, I guess, a positive in a way, so to speak. They, they're not thrown with Gen Pop and potentially a danger. But I wanted to has nothing to do with anything, but since we're on here, I'm so confused, I guess, during live chats. And the LA Mag channel, we are just starting to really push and grow. And it's been a pleasure, honestly. But I think the interesting part of this is just the random people in the chat. But there are amazing people, new people like Mary, Mary, you're lovely. I'm really happy that you're here. But then you've got like this person, white woman, Black MSN, Israel sponsored. I mean, you're crazy. You don't make any sense. Nothing we've talked about here has anything to do with Israel. You can't even, nothing. You can't pull anything out of this. So yeah, you're crazy. So maybe you should move along here. That's just totally. Oh, you're still going too. I see. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. This says a poor family person would get the DP or life in prison. A rich family person gets art and yoga classes for the rest of his life behind a high hedge. Okay. So listen, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. It's very clear. If you have money, if you have power, if you have status, yes, you are most likely treated a little bit better, of course. Although we all are under one system, we all should be treated fairly. But no, I think you're right. And I think that also because this case is so high profile and all eyes are on it, they really do have to do everything right here. And I think that even though I don't think that the Nick Reiner case is necessarily political, I can see how it's almost becoming political, because you do have one side here who is saying, you know, he killed his parents, he belongs in jail, that's it. Then you have the other side saying, well, wait a second, there are serious mental health issues at play and we have to address them. So again, I do feel like one side does not believe in the whole mental health awareness, that mental health plays a role in actions here, which is crazy to think that some people don't agree with that. And then again, you have the other side who's like, yeah, no, it does. So yeah. Anyway, if you guys have any other questions to drop in the chat, let me know. There hasn't been any new factual information, I guess, when it comes to the Nick Reiner case. Like I said, his arraignment is continued on the 7th, and we will find out if he is going to enter this not guilty by reason of insanity plea, or if his lawyers will say, you know what, we just don't think he's mentally competent. Oh God, sorry. This chat is so funny. Dizzy, I miss you so much. Dizzy's my old mod on my personal channel. We don't have mods yet, so yeah, we'll get there. We will get there, because I have a feeling that we're going to need them. But let me look up one thing to make sure I just didn't miss anything here. Oh, you know what was released? The death certificates. So we can launch those really quick. Hold on. I'll share them with you. Terrible, terrible. And obviously the medical examiner ruled their death homicides, and they died by multiple sharp force injuries. So let's see. These are, let me just change the banner really quick. And we can take a look at this death certificate. I'm changing the banner because people, you guys in the comments, I'm not catching all of them, but I am catching some of them that you're like, what's the topic? I don't know. We were speaking to Dr. DeWayne Hendrix, from former warden at MDC, about Nick Reiner and the process going about his mental health evaluation. And now we have moved on. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in for myself here. This is Rob Reiner's. This is so crazy to look at this. Oh my goodness. Some college, actor, director, producer, 63, kind of business, entertainment. Geez, imagine working your whole life being an absolute greatest of all time director, writer, producer, actor like Rob Reiner, and it all comes down to one word, entertainment. It's kind of depressing. Okay. He was cremated. The Mount Sinai mortuary. And there is his cause of death: multiple sharp force injuries with knife by another. Place of injury: other residence. Huh. Interesting. This is Michelle's. It does say, both of them say informant's name, Jake Reiner. Let me see. Jake Reiner, son. Let me just make sure I understand what. I want to make sure I understand the role of an informant on a death certificate. Okay, so the informant is the person who provides the personal and identifying information about the deceased to the funeral director or to the registrar. Okay, just to make certain. Let me see. No, I didn't talk about the probable cause yet, Dizzy. So I cannot get documents from the LA County Superior Court. I mean, I think you have to pick them up in person. So I have not been able to access upon trying to request these, but there is a case number for Nick Reiner as well. So it's either like you have to go through a FOIA request or you have to personally pick them up at the courthouse at this point. It's so annoying. But let me just make sure. Okay, so Michelle, the same. She was cremated at the Mount Sinai mortuary. Oh, this is so sad. With knife by another. Okay. If you noticed, her location of injury is crossed out. That's weird. I don't know if you guys heard this, or I mean, I have even reported this because this is what was factually reported, is that they were found in the master bedroom. But I guess when I say that, I have to try to go back and see if the LAPD actually put out that statement. I should check on Twitter, but why would Michelle Reiner's location be crossed out? I wonder if anybody noticed that when reporting on this. The gravity of the doc. Okay. So TMZ also, they put these out. They didn't notice anything. Oh, wait, hold on. There's an article. Let me see. Multiple sharp injuries. Certificates describe how the injuries occurred. With knife by another. Right. But Rob and Michelle's bodies were found by their daughter, and she told police her brother Nick lived with their parents and was dangerous and should be considered a suspect. Okay. Yes. So it doesn't really discuss why it would cross out where she was found. But if you notice between the two of these, like this appears to be a super long sentence. You can kind of see up there. But then with Rob, it just says, oh, wait. No, his is always, sorry, I'm an idiot, you guys. That's his address. They're just redacting the address. Okay. They both were found in the master bedroom. There's nothing mysterious about that. Ignore me. Completely ignore me. They're redacting their address. But one thing that was recently reported was that it wasn't like Romy, their daughter just came over and was like, where are my parents? A masseuse showed up to the house and was knocking because they had massage appointments. I guess this masseuse must have known Romy and then contacted her, and then she came over when no one answered. And apparently Romy lived very close to the family home. So, and no, Sal, they're redacting the address just because, they don't want people showing up at the house. It's, I mean, obviously they don't live there, but it's their private residence and it's a crime scene still. The charging doc has been released. I'm sure whoever disseminated it had to collect in person. Okay, let me find it then, because I did not see the actual charging doc, Dizzy. So let me see. If I can grab it. Oh, MJ. Hi. I haven't seen you in so long. I'm so happy you're here. And I don't, let me see. I think they were Jewish, but I don't know if they were religious or, yes, they are Jewish, born to Jewish parents. Obviously, Carl Reiner was Jewish. All right, I'm trying to grab the charging doc right now just so we can look for this really quick. Oh, thank you, Dizzy. You're great. You're emailing it to me. Just in case I beat you to it, let's see. Okay. You know what? I'll just wait for you to send it because I'm... Or... Nope. I don't have it yet. Dizzy, I'll wait for you. You're the best. Thank you so much. Okay. Wait, my phone messages? Let's see. There you are. Ah, you're the best. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is the charging doc. Wow. Why didn't I? Where did you? So somebody just pulled this, Dizzy, and then you were able to obtain it. All right, let's go through this really quick. It says, on or about December 14th, 2025, in the county of Los Angeles, the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony, was committed by Nick Reiner, who did unlawfully and with malice a forethought murder Michelle Reiner, a human being, note blah, blah, blah. Upon a felony conviction for the above offense, prison custody time is to be served in state prison, blah, 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 blah. And then this is the one for Rob Reiner. Oh, okay. I mean, it is alleged as to counts 1 and 2 that in the commission and attempted commission of the above offense, the said defendant, Nick Reiner, personally used a deadly and dangerous weapon, to wit, knife, said use not being an element of the above offense within the meaning of Penal Code Section, blah, blah. Okay. So basically, it's very simple, just counts 1 and 2 for murder. Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty simple charging doc. So yeah, I think most of us are very interested in the probable cause arrest affidavit to, I'm just interested in the timeline, I guess, and I would like to put a lot of the rumors to rest. I feel like, I don't know, I heard on Hot Mics with Billy Bush, he said something about how Michelle Reiner was still alive. And this is in the afternoon, on Sunday afternoon, and I was very confused. I was like, really? She would still be alive? I mean, basically hanging on all day, because Nick Reiner had checked into a hotel, as far as we know, because we do know some of that timeline. So I felt like that may not have been accurate information, but I don't know anything. I mean, we don't know the details yet. Again, we don't know the exact timeline. I wish that was, that was available for us, so these rumors would just stop. I will say, though, the people who have commented, you don't know that he was recently diagnosed with schizophrenia. TMZ reported that. It's like, guys, there are sources that are close to the family that want this out there. If that wasn't true, the family would have stepped in with somebody on a public relations team anywhere, and they would have said, this is untrue. That's how it works. I mean, I think that some people do need to sort of think outside the box. And I know that obviously when people hear TMZ, they're like, but they do have solid sources over there a lot of the time. They are on the ground. They have a huge staff. People tell them things. And again, if it was inaccurate or incorrect, I do believe that at this point, it's been a few days. What has it been? 4 days since that was reported. They would have said, nope, that's not correct. And they would have corrected the record. But as of right now, they're setting the stage, I think, for his defense, and they want this out there. That's my opinion, though. But anyway, MJ. Oh, MJ, I'm sorry for any troubles that you're having. I'll say a prayer for you. But thanks for being here, and I miss you. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you being here on this stream. If you don't like and subscribe to the LA Mag YouTube, please do so, because we'll have a lot more of streams like this. We'll have different experts on to speak about this case and other cases, of course. Most recently, we've had Mark Garagos join us, LA Magazine's own Mark Garagos, to talk about a bunch of different cases, again, including the Reiner case. I think we were talking about another case as well. Oh, we were talking about Celeste and David. So there's a lot going on. But yeah. And I do daily podcasts on this channel as well. So, and yay, Sal, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. We do have a lot of distressing news a lot of the time, but I feel like I should mix in some happy content at some point. And I will, I promise. But all right, everyone, thank you for joining. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, etc. Thanks so much, and I will see you later.